YouTube! As has been well documented by Fatboy Slim, everybody needs a 303, and I'm beginning to think that everybody needs a half dozen 303s. And fortunately, iOS developers are stepping up to help us out. Before we get going, I know that a lot of people wanted to see a comparison between Rhythm Studio and Tabletop, and I'm not going to be doing that. I feel that Tabletop's pricing model is both greedy and deceptive. If they want to charge $40 for their app, they should charge $40 for their app, and not charge $5 for their app and then have users discover that they need to spend more money to get basic functionality. That's just exploiting consumers and pisses me right the fuck off. So we're not doing that. Instead, Rhythm Studio by Pulse Code is offering a $4 app with all future instruments being a free part of updates. And they've even come out and said there will be no in-app purchases. So let's see what you get from them for $1 right now while it's on sale. The Studio includes a TB303 clone with modeled waveforms that sounds very authentic, a 808 clone that is also synthesized with a tone and snappiness control, as well as a little sampler that is programmed similar to the 303 with a step sequencer. All of the instruments can be programmed with the XY pad control, which can be further assigned to specific scales. It's also got two effects units, and the first has a flanger, chorus, and delay, and the amount can be controlled with these knobs. And the second insert is controlled by this button, which has various distortions and aux filters. There are pan knobs as well as faders, but you'll notice that there is no multi-touch, so you can't do two faders at once, you're just zooming around. I really like the VU meter, which I think should be included in all iPad apps, so you can avoid clipping. There's also mutes for each of the individual tracks. On the TB3, you have an interface that should seem very familiar to anybody who's ever used any kind of TB303 clone with a 16-step sequencer and your usual knobs. It's got modeled waveforms that are very authentic and squeaky, and it's a little too authentic and squeaky for my tastes. I prefer my music to be fucking dark, and I found it very difficult to get that with the saw waveform. It doesn't have the same sort of rich depth I've come to expect from other TB303 clones. The square wave, however, does a pretty good job. The distortion effects are particularly well suited to the resonance of the TB3. Up top you've got the sample tone instrument, which provides 32 presets on this sampler. They range from the acoustic to synths and organs, and all of them seem to benefit from some distortion. They also work really well with the TB303 sound. The sample tone has an innovative little addition of a sustain, which will hold the tones that were previously played. So this right now is playing the C sharp here into step 2 and step 3 before changing over. The drums come in from a 808 clone, which is not merely playing 808 samples, but is a full synthesizer unto itself, with a snappiness control for the snare, as well as tone and decay. The XY controller really sets Rhythm Studio apart from other similar apps, as you can play around with it and develop your own grooves and patterns without trying to tinker around inside of a step sequencer. With a record function, in addition to setting the scale in the options, you can change the key that your song is in. This also drives the random function, which is available here and you can select which instruments you want to be randomized, and it will now randomize in the scale in the key onto the pattern you select. This was really helpful when I needed a transition between patterns. I just hit the random to see what it would do, and it got it right on the first try. I just had to change the last two notes to get it to transition the way I wanted it to, but I was really impressed with it. One thing I want to point out, though, is that your songs are saved automatically. There's no tinkering around on your part at all to change that, so you see it's just saved in there. That's actually great for iOS devices, but you need to be aware of that, keep that in mind, because there is no undo. My only major complaint other than the multi-touch controls would be the way it handles exporting songs. You can't record performances like you can in Technobox 2, and you can't record automation like you can in Rebirth. If you want to record some lively knob twiddling, you're going to need to use an audio interface on your iOS device. A better comparison than Tabletop with this is Rhythm Studio compared to Technobox 2 and Rebirth, and in that regard I still prefer Technobox over the three. I'm personally going to use Rhythm Studio as an acid sketchbook, as the pattern, song, and loop modes are pretty solid. The ability to copy individual pattern parts between patterns is great. It makes for some very quick workflow once you get your head around it. In about an hour I had produced a song with a lot of analog goodness.